The literacy approach that I'm trying to sell you today are called big books. Now, what does that mean? People think of big books and they immediately go to the old school textbook. Well, that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about today is something that helps younger children learn how to read. For instance, it would be more of a book like this. Now, this is for older children, but we'll get back to that in a bit. Now, it would be more like that, a thin, very colorful, very animated book. They're used because you can read in front of your class with this. It's large print, lots of pictures to help the students follow along with the story, even if they can't read yet or even if they are beginners. Now, the pattern that you see with all students when it comes to using big books is that the first things first, they're observing someone who is already reading it and showing that they enjoy reading. So they're seeing this kind of interaction between the teacher and the students, or even the parents and their children. So basically what would happen is they would hold the book up to like this, they would read it. Oh, let me get to that page. They would read it and they would point out the picture and talk about it. So to get the students to move along with the story. Now, that's the first step. The second step is called emulation. What that means is that the students can copy. So they may not even understand what the book is saying or what they're looking at in front of them, but they know what the teacher said, so they can follow along even without full comprehension. The third step is that they're engaging. So they're also trying to go through the reading process. Of course, with guidance, the teacher can go through it with them. And then the fourth step is obviously to go on their own. So those are the four steps that you're more likely to see with students when they learn how to read using big books. One of the oldest known big books are what's known as the Dick and Jane books. They're very big. They mostly take up 19 inches long. They're very big. They pretty much just talk about this boy named Dick and this girl named Jane, and they just going through, and it's very simple, baseline stuff for your really, really early readers. Pictures are very big, obviously, with that big of a book, and it just goes through the story of them viewing different things, and here are just a couple of the pages. So those are just a couple examples of the pictures you would find of the pages from the Dick and Jane books. Like I said, those are for very basic readers. Now, I'm going personally for middle age groups, so I would be dealing with a little more older readers, and I'm going to point out this book right here, Dear Mrs. LaRue, Letters from Obedience School it was written and illustrated by Mark Teague. Now, how I would go about reading this to some of the older kids who may even be struggling with reading is I would open it up, I would go through the title, I'd make sure they understand who the author and the illustrator is, so they can get a better idea of just some of the terminology we use with books. I would even use every time we'd be now we turn the page, and then I would go through and read. It's really big text, you can't really tell, but I would go through and I'd read and I'd talk about what's going on the page. Same thing as I go, kind of just shows a little bit right there. But so yeah, those are big books. They're very helpful in the classroom and at home. Really gets readers into it, engaged in reading, especially if the person up front who is going through the book with them at first shows an enthusiasm for reading. So I feel like this is a very good way for students who don't know how to read and are beginning, or students that already have started and are trying to work on it. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you buy it.